guys pretty much work on their own. They've got their own tribal areas, and they have never been really controlled. Now, when the Britishers came here, and they were in India, Pakistan was all one, and the British tried to get into Afghanistan several times. The second time they went, they had about 20,000 troops. And believe it or not, there was one doctor who came back. The rest all were gone. And so it's kind of sad and difficult terrain. And then at one time, the Britishers gave it up as a bad job, and they drew a line over here, just an imaginary line, and they called it the Durand line. The Durand was the governor over there, and so they just set up that line. That line was set up by the Britishers. The Afghan government never recognized that. And after the Britishers left India and Pakistan, it was split obviously. At that stage, the Afghan government, because they had never recognized that, they still don't recognize that border, because that was made by the Britishers, and Pakistan got it by default. Now, people who live over here in Afghanistan, but the southern part of Afghanistan, and people who live over here, they're totally different. When I say different, I mean, they don't have 3 eyes and 2 noses, but they are from rest of Pakistan. Their language is different. People don't understand them in the rest of the country. Their traditions are different. Their poets are different. Their language is different. Basically, they're different in that sense. Tradition-wise, they might be killing each other. If you ask them, why did you kill that guy? He said, well, because he killed my father, or he killed his son. And it ends up the first time that somebody's cow or somebody's goat came in the other guy's yard and, grazed, and then finally it ended up, 50, 60, 80 years down the road killing each other. They don't even know why they're killing them. And so they got fortresses or houses. And you can't go in a neighborhood unless you let them know in advance that so-and-so will be coming here. So it's that kind of arrangement. Now, these people who live over here, the Pashtun, primarily they make 95% of the Taliban. And there are about 40 million of them. There's 12 million live in Afghanistan, the rest, 28 million, live in Pakistan. With the exception that there is a few in Karachi and in some other places. The majority of them live here, and the people who live in Karachi, which is the southernmost part in Pakistan, they are in transportation business. They'd be taking trucks, and so they kind of keep moving between the two areas. I probably jumped myself. The Red Line, I talked about that. Pashtun people, the NWFP in Qatar, 95% Taliban. These are Deobandi people, like I said, and they're not Wahhabi. Generally, you will see, or most of the time, you'll see, press or people quoting them as Wahhabis. They're not Wahhabis. It's an offshoot. The Saudis are more Wahhabis, but these guys are Deobandis. And the reason I say that is, when I told you about the Malala, the mosque I showed you, that guy was Deobandi. And when the Britishers were about to leave India and Pakistan or subdivided, he came to these areas and told them that you better join Pakistan, otherwise you don't have any future. And so these people, at least, the FATA and the NWFP, they joined Pakistan. Now the biggest thing is that Deobandi, these guys, they want the Sharia law. And Sharia law, with their interpretation, which is kind of unacceptable to the rest of the Muslim world.
But that is what they want, and that's how they think that, because it's their land, they should have their way. And so when I say their kind of Sharia law, when we go further, I'll show you what exactly they mean by that. And this, in some cases, it does not sit squarely with human rights, women's rights. But again, we got to understand that these people, for example, Hamid Karzai, he draws his power from his warlords. And those people under the warlords, and they subscribe to the idea of Devbandi or this kind of Islamic law, Sharia law. And you might have heard a few months or maybe about a year back when they had a law that husband said, well, if the wife does not give me sex, she can't have food. And they said, what kind of law is this? And so they tried to press Karzai on that. You can't have this kind of law. Well, the problem was that, these people who subscribe to this idea, Karzai doesn't, he has to get his power from these people. And if he doesn't kind of go hand in hand with these guys or don't accept their way, which in a way Karzai himself subscribes to, because he is a Pashtun. And so what happened is we just look the other way and let them have, whatever they want. And that's going to be exactly the same thing with women's rights, because very recently, not even a month back, when Hillary Clinton and all these people were in England having a conference where they're talking about, compromising with Taliban. What kind of compromise are we talking about? Basically, we are telling them, okay, you can have your way. Otherwise, they're not giving in. Let me touch a little bit between the difference between Taliban and Al-Qaeda. It's been in the press, it's been on the radio, and I think by now pretty much everybody knows, but just for people who don't know, we'll go over that. Al-Qaeda is primarily foreign fighters. And at one time, the Mujahideens, which were fighting against the Russians, CIA and ISI. ISI is Inter-Services Intelligence. It's one of the arms of the Pakistan military, if you will. And they put a plan together. They went to Egypt, Yemen, Syria, Iran, you name it. They went to all these different countries and got their most notorious people. People who were on death row, people who were condemned or life imprisonment. And these ships brought them from there, and brought them over into Pakistan, trained them over there, gave them weapons. Obviously the weapons were from America. And once they were trained, they went and fought against the Russians. Once, well, let me not go that far. That was Al-Qaeda. Talibans are localized people. Taliban are, we are Taliban for Monty, and so on and so forth. Their biggest qualm is that they don't want any outsiders on their land, no occupiers. Why? Because Talibans are local people, and I just told you local people over here are the Pashtun. And 95% of the Pashtun are the Taliban. And their biggest problem is they don't want any occupiers. And they don't make any distinctions between the Sikhs who came from India, the Britishers, the Russians before we went there, or the Americans. For them, they're all occupiers, they're all lookalike, they don't want them. They have said several times that we are not the people who came and did anything in 9/11. All we want is leave our place, and we'll be okay. So that's basically the difference between Taliban and Al-Qaeda.